In 2019, Ryan, and it was still a horribly impoverished country. We're cutting off fuel to try and get this leadership out. Get them the hell out of there because they won't leave. They won't have an election. They won't leave.
Why do you care about like who's in charge in Cuba? Who elected you to do that? It's such a bizarre. Like there aren't enough problems in the United.
Exactly. Who elected any politician in the House, in the Senate, in the White House? Who elected them to regime change Cuba? Who elected anybody in any of our politicians because we feel so strongly about what's going on in Cuba? Who? What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Trey.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Back at it with another video.
Another one.
First off, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Obviously, I'm a new YouTuber. I'm trying to grow, and I really appreciate it if y'all take the time to subscribe. Also, let me know if y'all are feeling the content, if y'all not feeling the content, and what I could change. Obviously, I don't know if y'all are loving it or hating it, unless you let me know in the comments. So, without further ado, we're going to get into another Breaking Points video. They're talking about the situation down in Cuba and pretty much how us as Americans are trying to insert ourselves in other countries and how they're run. Specifically as it pertains to Cuba, starving them from oil and the effect that it's having on the Cuban economy and the situation on ground. So we got Ryan and Emily from Breaking Points that are going to get into it. Ryan actually went to Cuba to help out and see what was going on, do some reporting, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into it.
You went on Newsmax just last night on Rob Schmidt's show, and he asked you basically to defend this trip we've been discussing. So Juan David Rojas pointed out, he posted I thought that he put it really well. He reports for Compact and other news outlets from all over Latin America. You probably remember him having been on the show several times. He says, Earth to anti-imperialist fundamentalists. This is the most honest and effective way of advocating for the Cuban people. Ryan doesn't talk about, quote, participatory democracy or the regime's righteousness. He talks about the real-world consequences and double standards of our despicable policies. Better yet, he asks how any of this benefits Americans. This method is so effective, the interviewer concedes multiple times. Juan David adds, the difference between Ryan and Piker are...
So see, they're going to get into it, but see what he's talking about is like, hey, they start the I think the guy from Newsmax, he starts the conversation with, hey, like, why are you trying to keep this regime alive, and why are you trying to support this regime? And he's like, look, man, I don't care. I care about the people. We're here offering aid. Why, I think he's from Washington or something like that, but why, as whatever state that you're from, why do we care about what's happening in Cuba? Why do we want to insert ourselves into Cuban politics and how their country is run? What do we gain from essentially running their country or deciding how their country is run?
Norton is his first, second, and third priorities are normie Cubans, not the PCC oligarchy staying in power. Ryan, I do feel as though you, maybe it's your reporter background, are very careful in how you cover Cuba. And I thought that came out in this conversation with Rob Schmidt, where nowhere do you ever, or did you in your reporting from Cuba, defend the regime, which is a very easy thing not to do.
And I will defend the quote-unquote regime in the sense of when I think they're being unfairly criticized.
The media is getting a story wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. But if you consider that to be like a defense of imprisoning 1,000 political prisoners, that's not the same.
Right, and also it's important to just understand the reality of who is actually causing the suffering. It is the sanctions, it's the embargo, blockade, the state sponsor of terror designation. In this interview, we didn't get into kind of the details of it, but as you saw from the last segment, like Cuba is blocked from purchasing MRI machines for the most part, or getting helium to keep their MRI machines running. They can't buy anything that has a minimum of 10% of U.S. parts in it. Even when they end up buying, they bought a 3D printer to try to get around this so that they could produce medical supplies, these unique medical supplies that people needed.
Just think about that for a second. Like a whole country cannot, like they can't really have MRI machines. So think about their healthcare system and all that stuff. So people, we always use people, right? People's humanity in a sense, right? It's hilarious that we use that as an arguing point or as a topic of conversation when we're talking about foreign policy and things like that. We're talking about the people, right? We won't allow the government to buy MRI machines. So the people are going to suffer from that. They're not going to be able to be properly diagnosed with all these different medical ailments. So their medical care is going to suffer, right? We have been blocking them from getting oil since we kidnapped the Venezuelan president, right? Since we kidnapped Maduro, right? Who is that affecting? Blackouts on a daily, weekly, whatever basis, all the things that oil and gas are used for. Who is that affecting? Is it just affecting the regime? It's strictly, we've only affected the regime in that country. Think about how many people are starving, suffering, like no job, like economically hit by the fact that they can't get oil into this country. Like, y'all got to wake up to the fact that, like, we talk a big game and we structure our messaging specifically where we want to structure it. Like I can go on Fox News right now and see how they're going to structure the message and pinpoint you in a certain direction. But guess what? Nobody's talking about the effect that it's having on the people of Cuba, that we're doing all these things.
It broke down. The German company said they can't send a tech out because of the U.S. sanctions. Mm-hmm. And they said, actually, that's not true. Like, there's an EU law that says, and Michel Valdez-Sosa relayed this story to me. He was on the phone with the vice president. He said, there's an EU law that says you're not allowed to follow U.S. sanctions. Yeah. Because it's EU sovereignty. Yeah. Means that you have to make your own decisions. You cannot be driven by U.S. sanctions. And the guy told him, yeah, I know that law is on the books. We do a lot of business with the United States. We don't do much business with Cuba. I'm sorry that you bought $1 million 3D printer from us. We're not going to be able to fix it. And so it's just sitting there collecting dust. So we didn't get into a lot of those details about the way that the sanctions and the embargo play a primary driver of the immiseration of the island. But the point I did make to him is, if you think that's not true and the system is so flawed and unable to succeed, let it try.
And make inroads with them so they don't turn to Russia and China.
And there you go. Yeah.
And it's we don't have to keep doing it.
Also, I haven't seen Schmidt calling for regime change in Saudi Arabia over like the human rights abuses and the lack of democracy in Saudi Arabia.
And that the argument Ryan brought up just there is also like just glaringly true. Like we can't use we're picking and choosing, right? There's no way, if we were really standing on principle for all these different things with Iran, with Cuba, with Venezuela, if we were really standing on principle, we would have to do this in so many areas. We would be fighting everybody all the time. Like we would be everywhere all the time. We wouldn't be able to focus at all on things that are going on at home. Yeah, man, it's just a ridiculous point to try and make, and I hope people wisen up and smarten up to the fact that it's happening.
Make Cuba look like Switzerland.
Well, this is a great back and forth. I think it draws out some important contrasts. So without further ado,
here we go.
Ryan on Newsmax.
Dropside News reporter Ryan Grimm also traveled to Cuba as well, reporting on all this. He's seen in this photo here. And Ryan joins us tonight, and it's good to have you back on the show. The Trump administration is trying to end a 70-year regime. It looks like these guys, along with you there, are trying to help it survive. Am I missing something?
Wait, they're trying to do what?
Trying to help this regime survive.
Who is?
Piker, most of the people there. I'm wondering if yourself, along with them, are included in that.
Try to sneak in.
Yeah, the group that went along brought about 50 tons worth of medical supplies and solar panels.
Yeah.
That's right.
medical
Exactly.
supplies
They're
and
trying
solar
to help us
panels,
survive, right.
and a lot of sympathies for the regime that controls the country, I imagine.
So let me try to help out your viewers a little bit here.
All right.
How do you feel about the fact that when Americans travel to a foreign country, in this case Cuba, they are told specifically a list of hotels that they are allowed to stay in another country?
I went through it because when I went and stayed there, it was the same. I stayed in an Airbnb. I think if you have
So
if
what
our
do you
country's
think of
trying
that,
to
though?
squeeze,
What
our
do you
country's
think?
trying
What do
to.
you think of that?
I think our country's trying to end a regime that's been torturing people for a very long time, and they don't want to fund it.
Well,
they
first
don't
of
want
all-
us funding it by paying money to a communist-owned entity like a hotel.
So if their system of government is so awful, why not just let it fail on its own? Why do we have to blockade them? And how do you
Because they
think,
won't leave. They don't have elections. They won't leave power.
How do you think the United States economy would do if we cut off fuel for 3 straight months? No fuel has basically gotten into Cuba since the Venezuela operation.
Yeah, but
How do
I
you
was there,
think-
and I was there.
So yeah, we'll sit with that for a moment. How do you think we would do without fuel for 3 months? What do you think the effect that it would have on your everyday life? I know what it would have what effect it would have on me, but yeah, you. The United States of America is cut off from fuel for 3 months. Think of how that shit would affect us.
In 2019, Ryan, and it was still a horribly impoverished country. But we're cutting off fuel to try and get this leadership out. Get them the hell out of there because they won't leave. They won't have an election. They won't leave.
Why do you care about like who's in charge in Cuba? Who elected you to do that? It's such a bizarre. Like there aren't enough problems in the United.
Exactly. Who elected any politician in the House, in the Senate, in the White House? Who elected them to regime change Cuba? Who elected anybody in any of our politicians because we feel so strongly about what's going on in Cuba? Who?
United States here for you to worry
Well,
about? Like,
that's another side of it.
Really, like I can't even get my mind to a place where I would think it's my call. Like who runs Cuba? Who runs Haiti? Who runs Mexico? Who runs Iraq? Who runs Iran? Like
That's a
who
fair
runs Israel?
That's a fair criticism. That's
Yeah,
a fair
like,
criticism.
why do
But
you
I mean,
care?
do you think it's better for do you want this regime to continue to run this country against the wishes of the people
It's not
that
up
are
to
all
me.
impoverished?
It's not up to me. I live
Okay.
in Washington D.C. I vote in Washington D.C. elections, and I vote in federal elections. Where do you live?
You live in yeah, that's fair.
Where do you live?
I live in New York.
So,
And it's not.
why should you vote? Why should you like? What do you have to do with Cuba?
Well, I think the prosperity of that country that's only 90 miles away from our border can't be a bad thing. And I'm just saying, what I'm asking you is,
then why not let them import oil?
It's fine. It's not America first. Let's put it there. But
Why
do you
does it-
think
why
that
does
that
it bother
regime should be
you?
running the country?
Why does it bother you if Mexico sells oil to Cuba? You live in New York. In what world is it a New Yorker's responsibility to stop Mexico from selling oil to Cuba?
That's okay. Fair criticism right there. My question to you is, why do you care? Why did you travel there? Why did you? If you don't care, why did you travel there to try and support the regime?
Hey, look at that lower thirds. Commie loving leftists return from Cuba. This is the kind of shit that I'm talking about. So Newsmax is, obviously not Fox News, but I think they're even worse than Fox is, if you could believe that. But yeah, commie loving leftist returns from Cuba. Has he said anything that makes him a commie loving leftist? Anything? He hasn't said anything in support of the regime, which the dude keeps trying to force that argument, right? Why are you supporting the regime? Why are you supporting the regime? He keeps trying to frame the argument that way, but Ryan's not falling for it, obviously, and he's not once supported the regime in his responses. He's supporting their right to be Cuba and do whatever Cuba deems is necessary. If Cuba doesn't want, these things to happen, that's for them to determine. That's for the people to determine, right? And if it is going to be our argument that it we cannot allow these things to stand, well then, hey, we got a long list of places that we better be going to, if that's really our argument.
I'm a journalist, and the United States is literally killing people. We are killing people. I toured 2 hospitals. One was a pediatric hospital.
Yep.
We implemented a new rule in February that says that if you're a private business, you can import oil, you can import fuel. So the hotel where we were required to stay is allowed by the United States government to have fuel. Hospitals, because they have a publicly run healthcare system, are not allowed to have fuel. I heard a lot of people complaining that the hotel still had power, but the hospitals didn't, not understanding apparently that it is a U.S. rule that blocks the hospitals from getting fuel. I toured the pediatric hospital. You know what the nurses and doctors there told me? They said when the power goes out, they immediately turn on their phone lights and race to the babies on ventilators.
Let me ask you this.
Because there's a gap.
And hold on. I understand.
Hold on
We're killing babies with no power.
There's a gap between when the power goes out and when the generator kicks in that can be up to like 5 or 6, 7 minutes. Yeah. A baby can die in that time on a ventilator. So they have to take their phone, turn the light on, race, and hand pump the ventilator. Because the United States has decided that Mexico can't sell oil and fuel.
But we're doing this for the people now. We're doing this for the people. We could have implemented all kind of different things to make sure the people aren't going to suffer because we're starving the country out of oil, right? You could have had some sort of humanitarian aid for the sake of the hospitals and things of that nature. No, this is not about the people. This is about trying to force the government, their government to change, right? We're trying to force regime change. But all that being said, people, they haven't reported on any of the deaths, but come on, it don't take a rocket scientist to determine the longer these blackouts go, the more likely that people in critical conditions in hospitals and things of that nature are going to potentially die from this.
To Cuba. What does that have to do with the United States?
That's fine. If you want to say it's not America first, that's fine. But let me ask you this. How many tens of thousands of people have died over the last 30, 40 years as this country has lived in extreme poverty? 88% of the people live in extreme poverty. The government will not allow any kind of capitalism in to bring these people up, to bring the quality of life up. How many thousands and thousands of their own people has that government killed? We're trying to strangle out a government here. And yes, there's going to be there's going to be some negative impacts of that, like you just described. That's fair. But how many people have died because of the government in power?
I interviewed the number 3 guy in Cuba. Cuba. I will let you have the interview. You can air the entire thing. He said Cuban nationals, Americans, are welcome to invest in Cuba. He said they're open to, in a holistic negotiation, compensating Americans for property that was seized during the revolution.
Well, they're capitulating now. Right.
What they want, they offered that in the 1960s. The United States refused it because we thought we were going to do regime change. So why take a deal if we're just going to do regime change?
Well,
we didn't overthrow the government. We failed over and over and over. We tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, a dozen plus times. We tried an invasion of Bay of Pigs. It didn't work. Every other country, Italy, France, Spain, they all took compensation for what was nationalized.
And that's the reason why Trump says something like, "Oh, I think I'll have the honor of taking Cuba." We've been trying this for decades. Acting like this is such a righteous move on our part it's bullshit, man. Let's just be honest. We actually have a president that doesn't give a fuck about optics, and he wants to bully his way across the world. He's already been a bully for as long as he's been on the political scene, right? And now he wants to use the military in the same type. Well, in this case, right, he's not using the military yet. He's setting up, by just starving them off of oil. But, he's already said that after he's finished with what we're doing in Iran, next stop, Cuba.
You can invest here. Yeah. We will compensate you for what was nationalized. All we're asking is that you lift the sanctions and leave us alone. Why
Leave
is that
the
a bad
regime
idea?
alone.
Leave Cuba alone.
Leave
Yes,
the,
worry
leave
about
the
New York.
regime alone and let the people continue to suffer. I mean, did you see the people there? The misery of the people that live in that country under these a-holes? It's horrific.
The misery is like unspeakable.
Unspeakable.
It is unspeakable.
Been that way for a long time.
It's a lot worse. It's the people who were there in December and people who obviously live there are telling me like it's noticeably worse. You know how you have people like starvation and homelessness wasn't really a thing. Like there was poverty. It wasn't like
extreme
a rich
poverty.
country.
Yeah.
But even a few months ago,
90% of the people live under $2 a day. I mean, that's nobody in America lives under $2 a day. Not a single person. I gotta leave it there. I really do. You're a good sport for coming on, Ryan Grimm from Dropside News.
You got it.
Good to see you.
And again, so at the end of the day, he got that last piece in there. Yeah, it's the regime that is there. The country is, the people in the country are some of the poorest people in the world, right? Yeah, I feel for them. Obviously, I don't like to see any humans suffering. Again, we have our own problems here. So I can feel we could spend all day looking at all the conditions of many different peoples in other countries across the world, and I will sympathize and empathize with their struggles that they must be going through and how they are suffering. But I can't change everybody. I can't do anything about it for a majority of those people. Hell, I can't do anything about it for any of those people. And for us as Americans to pick and choose who we want to help is telling. It's telling. We have been trying to do this with Cuba for decades because of what we stand to gain from it, not because the kindness of our heart and soul. We're not doing it strictly for kindness. We would do it for so many other places if we were really only doing it for kindness. We got to wake up to the reality that we're doing it for what there is for us to gain from the situation, and that's all. But y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all thoughts on it. Do y'all think that, hey, us going and changing out the regime in Cuba is something that should have happened a long time ago? And if you believe that way, I hope that you have a laundry list on which countries are next that we need to go in and regime change. Or do you think this is just a plot for us to take over and run, put our people in place so we can, run another country through proxy? But until next time, I'll holla.
Why you hating on my energy? I don't think you wanna be my enemy. I pop out, they go wild, so celebrity. Too busy winning, I forgot that I got frenemies.